Yeah. Okay, here we have a starter motor in bits.
Hi, I'm Darren, an untrained amateur who's determined to save one of the last of these classic cars. This is Roy, a 45-year-old 2.8 litre Vauxhall Royale coupe. When I owned one 30 years ago, they were rare. Now they're unknown. This is one of the last of its kind, and I'm going to rescue it and relive my youth. Follow the rebuild, watch this legend come back to life. Well, we've seriously slowed the leak down over a week now. So there's nothing like as much as there was, but it is still leaking ATF. So unfortunately, the sump has got to come off and we need some gasket sealant around the gasket. There's obviously something wrong with the gasket. We've also got a intermittent starting problem. The starter motor won't reliably turn over. The solenoid's engaging, clicking the starter into place, and it's doing it more often than not. That's that. So I think I'm gonna put Roy away and come back in the boiler suit tomorrow, and we'll have a go at that gasket. Right, morning everyone. Welcome to Underneath Roy. Now, we're chasing this persistent problem with automatic transmission fluid leaking. Now, I tightened up the gasket a week or so ago and it is still leaking. Significantly less than it was, has to be said, but it is still leaking. So I'm thinking what I've probably got to do is drop the sump and put some gasket sealant on things. Things obviously aren't right somewhere. We have got wetness around the gasket. So, and it is sort of bulging here. I'm wondering whether it's not quite in the right place. I didn't put any gasket sealant on it. If I'd have had my time again, I definitely would have done. So I think what we'll do is we'll pull that sump and put some gasket sealant on it, because at least that way we can say that we have done everything we can do. Okay, so I'm hoping that gives a reasonable view of what's going on. It's fairly safe to say that this car is going to have had one hell of a ATF flush. Brilliant, that doesn't fit. One moment. Draining on the sump here actually doesn't take, only takes a couple of litres out of it. It's the bulk of the ATF that is in it is in the torque converter. Having said that, we did used to have really manky fluid colour in this. These days it's looking rather lovely. It's had so much fresh fluid go through it, and it's, you know, had as much drained out as possible, and it's now looking an absolutely beautiful colour. So another little fluid change won't help it, won't hurt it really. I'm assuming that what this is just the gasket is not quite sealed and needs a bit of help. Really, While I was on holiday, I read a book by Bill Bryson. Bill Bryson's one of my favourite authors. And he says such witticisms as, there is always a little more toothpaste in the tube, and I think it is appropriate here. There is always a little more oil in the sump than you think. See that mating surface? Absolutely beautiful. Alright, let's let that drip gently. Right, so there is the sump, complete with gasket. Nothing was sort of misaligned or anything. It all does look right. But I'm imagining what it is there's a warp or something in it. It all looks reasonably squeezed in there as well. I'm assuming that this pan has just got a bit of a warp in it. It is, that gasket surface is oily. It's not dry, so it has been leaking through it. Okay, I'm going to put some gasket cement around that, and then we'll set the gasket back in place. I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've given everything a coat of RTV and put the gasket back. We'll give it another coat of RTV over the top and then put it all back in and screw it down. So mating surface a good wipe. Okay, so we've got the cork gasket sandwiched with RTV now. That's the sump taken off, resealed, put back, torqued up, and some ATF put in there again. I've cleaned out the drain pan. We'll put it back under the car and see if we get anything come out. In the meantime, we've got this continuing problem which is getting worse with the starter. And what happens is when you turn the key, you hear the starter engage, but it doesn't necessarily turn. Now that could be one or two things going on. So we're going to go and investigate what it is. To try and understand what's going on, what we have for the starter is a solenoid on the top with a battery voltage and an output. Then we have underneath the actual starter motor with its gear on there. And what happens is when you apply, there's a ignition live terminal there, when you apply a power to that, a voltage to that, this solenoid moves a lever out which engages the gear, the pinion, with the flywheel and turns the engine over. And what it does at the same time is when that engages, when that's moved all the way out, it lives up this terminal, which is connected directly to the starter, and then applies power to the starter motor. So it's called a pre-engaged starter. So that solenoid at the top will move, and only when it's fully engaged does it apply power to the motor. So we've got two possible points of failure here. Either that solenoid is not going all the way, not engaging properly, in which case this bottom terminal will not go live. There'll be 0 volts on it because the motor shouldn't start yet. But alternatively, if the solenoid is working properly and if that's going all the way and we do get 12 volts on that bottom terminal, then the problem is in the motor, and I'm wondering whether it's the brushes in the motor. So what we're going to go and do with the engine, with the starter on the car, so it still has the load of the engine on it, all you need to do is apply 12 volts to that starter terminal. So I'm just going to put a lead on there so I can just touch it on and off 12 volts and make the solenoid operate. And at the same time I'm going to put a voltmeter on this bottom terminal, because if I can make the solenoid engage and I do get 12 volts out of the solenoid, then the solenoid is working and the problem is in the motor. If I get the solenoid to engage and I don't get 12 volts out of the solenoid, the problem is in the solenoid and the motor's likely okay. So let's go and do that and see if we get any conclusive results. Right, so we've got a jumper wire on here which will make the starter solenoid engage. If I touch that on there, and that was the problem there. Did you see that? It was engaged but it wasn't moving. And we're engaged and we've got a very small voltage. So we're not getting a voltage out of that solenoid. So that solenoid is not engaging properly. Getting our 12 volts on the top like we should. But we're not getting it on the bottom. Right, let's pull the starter. Okay, so I've taken the starter off the car. If I just activate it off the car, it seems to work. It does seem to engage and do everything it should. I'm not entirely sure about this end here. I think the bearing's broken in the end. It looks like there's half a bearing. So I'm just going to take it apart and see what, if anything, is wrong. Because I know they're available, it might be easier just to get a new one. Okay, here we have a starter motor in bits. Starting at the back, the brushes, I don't want to take the commutator out too far because it's a pain to get them back in, but the brushes look like they've got quite a lot of meat left on them. So, not worried about that. Squirt of contact cleaner is all that needs. The pinion gear and everything looks fine, but where we have got a fault is what I suspected. This bush that's in the nose there's only half of it. So this is like a phosphor bronze bush, and half of it is missing. And I suspect that what that's doing is it's causing the solenoid not to be able to properly engage, and if it doesn't properly engage, if it doesn't push all the way forward, it won't make the connection between the two terminals and therefore turn the motor, and that would be exactly the fault we were seeing. So needs a bit of a clean up, but I'm going to have a quick Google and see if I can get a new bush for it, because if I can, I think it just needs clean and a new bush, and it should be happy. Right, just to be sure, I'm measuring all of the sizes of this, as I've got precision equipment to measure it. I might as well. So that appears to be the diameter of that. This is in thou, but we can convert it. And that is 450 plus 20, 470, 471, 471. Yeah, 471 thou. And then we've got the internal roundness of that there. Now it looks like it might have a bit of wear on it, so it's a little bit out of round. Well, that feels about right. Okay, so that is the size, and it's 659.8 659 thou and 8/10 of a thou. And yes, I did 3D print myself a little thing for all this stuff to live in, because I can. And then finally we need the depth, and that is 570 thou and 2/10 of a thou. Well, between 1 and 2/10 of a thou. I hope you're taking a note of all of that lot. Okay, so that's the end of today's video. I'm gonna go back home, get onto a decent computer, look up the part numbers of that starter motor and see if I can get the correct bush. I think I found the right one on eBay already, but I'm not entirely sure. It's only about £4, and if that's all that's causing the problem, then great. Otherwise I should be able to get a solenoid for the top if the solenoid is playing up. But you know, rather than £300 for a new starter, that's probably a good thing. I've put a clean drip tray underneath the automatic transmission. We'll see if anything drips out of it. It's been refilled, so normally it would, if it was going to leak, it would leak. So yeah, Roy's not going anywhere this weekend. We'll get this starter motor sorted, because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm out and I can't restart it. So I want to be sure that's working okay before I take it out on any more runs. But for the meantime, that's probably it. So thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. We were dangerously close to 400 subscribers last time I looked, which is major YouTube sensation territory. Frankly, it does amaze me that there is 400 people that want to watch this, but anyway, if we could get to 500 it'd be even better. But anyway, yeah, so like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you in the next one.